and you cry just like I'm crying now. I know when it happens, you'll remember I told you so. Each time I see you with someone new, I die just a little inside. But one day I won't care no more. Just remember I told you so. There's an old true saying that what goes up must come down. And I really believe in that saying, that what goes around comes around. So go on and have your fun. I'll be here when your fun is done. Oh, when you start crying and your heart feels low, just remember I told you so. I told you, darling, I told you so. And oh, I know you remember I told you so. And ha! Who's got the last laugh now? I told you.
Farmville, Prince Edward County, Virginia. 99 years ago, about 30 miles from here at Appomattox Courthouse, the Civil War came to an end. Yet the vestiges of that conflict are still at issue here. 10 years ago, when the United States Supreme Court announced its famous desegregation decision, one of the 5 cases it covered originated here in Farmville. For 5 years after the decision, Prince Edward's school system remained segregated and unchanged. But in 1959, the Supreme Court ordered implementation of its earlier decision. And rather than desegregate, the Prince Edward County Board of Supervisors closed the public schools. A private school system was organized for white children only. An offer to set up separate schools for Negro children was rejected by the Negro community. For 4 years, Negro children who were able got their education in other counties and other states. By 1963, a desegregated free school system was established through private funds. It was attended mainly by Negroes, plus a handful of whites. But the white private schools remained open, and the public schools remained closed. Last week, the United States Supreme Court decided that Prince Edward County had deliberated too long, and directed the Federal District Court to take the necessary steps for the reopening of the public schools. I am Al Perlmutter. This week, At Issue visits Farmville, Virginia. Reverend L. Francis Griffin felt a deep and personal joy in the decision. He now heads the NAACP for the state of Virginia, but still lives in Farmville, where he has been working, preaching, and prime moving for more than 15 years. The Supreme Court case bears the names of his children.
I am pleased, as are other Negroes in Prince Edward County, Virginia, that the court has finally made its decision. The ruling may not be as strong as we would have liked. However, it does seem to vindicate the position of the Negro children in Prince Edward County and guarantees them some relief in the fall.
Farmville has one editorial page, printed regularly on Tuesdays and Fridays here in the Farmville Herald. J. Barrye Walle is the Herald's editor. He is also a member of the board of the private all-white school. When the Supreme Court announced its decision last week, J. Barrye Walle responded with this editorial.
Under Virginia law and the Virginia Constitution, Prince Edward has the right to support public schools or not to support public schools. Under the recent Supreme Court ruling, this right has been taken away. Instead, the court has declared that it has the power to order the Prince Edward Board of Supervisors to levy taxes for support of public schools. Under what law this power is derived is not stated.
Private schools serve white students. They have been in operation throughout the county's educational crisis. But the Negroes of Prince Edward County have experienced what has been called an experiment in ignorance. 4 years without educational facilities. Last year, a partial resolution was reached with the formation of the Free School Association. Through the association, Negroes and whites, if they choose, can attend free schools such as this one, Moton High School, on the outskirts of Farmville. The project was inspired and encouraged by the United States Department of Justice. Its one-year operating budget of $1 million was provided by private contributions. The Free School Association will end its work soon. The Supreme Court decision, when implemented, will make its continuation unnecessary. The principal of Moton High School is James Cooley. His challenge was a unique one: to bring back to formal and disciplined education 560 students who have not seen schoolrooms in the past 4 years. Mr. Cooley, how successful have you been in reacquainting students with classroom work?
Well, we feel that we have been very successful. We are pleased with the progress that has been made here. The children have responded well to our program. They're very enthusiastic and they seem to be highly motivated, and we think we're making progress.
Is it ever possible to completely make up for the time lost?
Well, I don't believe actually that we could ever compensate for the loss of time entirely of these students, but we do have an enriched program which we think is far beyond what you would find in most rural consolidated schools, and this will go a long way, of course, to help make up for some of this loss that these children have experienced.
In what age groups are the difficulties most evident?
Well, in the lower age groups, we have our school divided into two areas, the lower school and the upper school, and the 13, 14, 15-year-old students seem to experience more difficulty in reading. This has been a terrific problem with us, and we've been working on it since the beginning, but I think we've made remarkable progress under the circumstances.
A free school class in general science. Most of these students had no access to schools prior to the formation of the Prince Edward Free School Association. The general science teacher is Mr. C.J. Cuffey.
This morning, class, we're going to continue our discussion of matter. And as you know, matter is anything that has weight and occupies space. First of all, we would like to know what are the units of matter and what is the molecular theory. Carrie, would you go to the board and put up the units of matter and the molecular theory for us?
Mr. Cuffey, what age groups do you have represented in this class?
I have 13-year-olds represented in this class.
How would they compare, would you say, in achievement with a normal school situation?
Well, the 13 and 14-year-old age group is comparative to the 7th grade in the graded system.
What effects have you noticed of the lack of schooling of the last few years on your students?
Well, there have been some lack of skills such as reading and writing, but I think that with a year of free schools, I think that they have ironed out some of the difficulties, and there still has to be a great deal of work to be done to bring them, really up to par.
Have you employed special methods for this purpose?
Well, we believe in a utilization of many methods, and we use the lecture method in large group instruction. We use the demonstration method. We use socialized recitation. And we experiment in class particularly because this is a science class and we try to do as much as we can. And also we have educational television. which has been a boon to our particular classroom.
Well, this particular age group had experienced school before, and I was wondering if you've noticed any special resistance in returning to the regimented routine of a school.
Well, I don't think that any of the students see the free schools as regimentation. I think they see it as something wonderful, and I think that all of them like it, and there's a great amount of enthusiasm on their part, and they are actually working and doing their best.
Thank you.
While Carrie is putting the molecular theory on the board and the units of matter, we'll have Lydia to begin reading our reading assignment.
Chemistry is the study of the composings of matter. It is the science that treats of how things are made, how they are put together, and the changes that take place in these things under different conditions. Chemistry.
In the auditorium, some students talk with Leonard Zweig.
Martha Bailey is one of the students who did not go to school at all for 4 years. Martha, what were you doing for those 4 years?
During the 4 years, I attended the training centers and the crash programs set it up in the county. The crash programs were carried on by students from Queen College in New York.
Well, what were the aims of that crash program?
Mostly it was to keep us from forgetting what we'd learned. We weren't advanced in grade level. It was just to keep us together.
Martha, you're 17 now, and ordinarily you'd be just about graduating from high school. But what grade are you in?
I'm not in a definite classification. I'm in an 8th grade homeroom, but I'm taking both 9th and 10th grade subjects.
Martha, I understand your family plans to leave this state, possibly go to Maryland. Well, if that happens, you'll be going to an integrated school. Do you think that will help you?
Yes, I think it will. It'll help me both educationally and socially, because here in the state of Virginia and in our county, it's usually the Negroes are to themselves and the whites are to themselves. But if I get away and I'll be able to mix and mingle with the crowd, I think it will help me in further life.
Well, thank you very much, Martha.
Thank you.
There are 2 white students in this high school, and 6 attend the elementary free schools. One of the seniors here is Dick Moss. Dick plans to attend Colby College in Maine this fall. He is the son of the dean of Longwood College, a girls' teachers' college in Farmville. Dick, why did you come to the free school?
Well, for the past 4 years, my father's been fighting for the reopening of the public schools here in the county. And when he found out about the free school being open this fall, he told me about it in the latter part of the summer and asked me if I'd want to go there. And he left the decision up to me. I could have gone back to prep school, as I have been going the past 4 years. And he asked me if I'd go, and I told him that I would, because I thought it was something I could do for him and show my appreciation for what he's been doing.
Have you had any trouble with old friends or other people in Farmville because you come to the free school?
Well, I haven't had any trouble with my old friends because, well, most of my friends now are in college, and it doesn't bother them. They're not integrationists, to say, but they don't care. It doesn't matter to them one way or the other. In the beginning of the year, I did have a little trouble from what we call rednecks, boys who lived out in the country, who kind of heckled me at first when I was by myself every now and then, back in October maybe, but I haven't had any trouble to anything lately.
Dick, why don't more white students come to the free schools?
Well, I think it's mainly because of the way the parents have, let's say, brainwashed them into thinking that it's a completely wrong thing to do, that they shouldn't be in school with colored children. I don't think it's so much that the teenagers themselves as it is the parents who instill this in their minds.
Thank you, Dick.
Residents of Prince Edward County opposed to integrated schools established the Prince Edward Academy in 1959 as an all-white, tuition-charging private school. 70 students will graduate here next week. 1,250 are enrolled throughout the county. The academy opened when the County Board of Supervisors refused to authorize funds for the public school system, which the Supreme Court had ordered to integrate. A nonprofit corporation, the Prince Edward School Foundation, operated the academy at first through private donations and then by tuition grants. But in 1961, the federal district court ruled that the state and county could not support private schools as long as the public schools remained closed. Since then, parents have been paying tuition charges of $250 to $275 a year. Some students who cannot afford to pay receive scholarships from the foundation. Officials of the school feel that they have been treated badly by the nation's news media. Students have been advised not to answer questions for our cameras. The president of the Prince Edward School Foundation, Mr. Roy Pearson, expressed his position. Mr. Pearson, why did the members of the foundation find it necessary to establish the Prince Edward Academy?
The case has been in courts, you know, for all these years, and when we received the orders in the county to integrate the schools in September 1959, they decided to continue the case in court. The local board of supervisors did not provide any money at all for the operation of public schools, and the children of both races were faced without any public schools. So the white people had decided years ago that if such a situation occurred, they would establish a private school system to educate their children during the interval the cases were being fought out in court. At that time, educational grants were available from the state of Virginia and the county of Prince Edward to all students, regardless of race, origin, or creed, and money was available. And after our school system was established, a group of white citizens in the county also organized a similar entity for the express purpose of setting up a private school system for the Negroes during this period that the cases would be fought out in court.
Could you give us some insight as to its operation?
Yes, I'd be very glad to. We've operated primarily at the beginning in Sunday school premises of churches and fraternal organization buildings, and in a few private buildings. And the second year, we put on a building campaign to raise funds to build this nice academy that you now see. And this is our 5th year of operation, and we have a total of 59 teachers scattered throughout the county. We are operating a very first-class school, which has been accredited each of the 5 years of operation. We graduate somewhere between 56 and 58% of our graduates go off to schools and universities of higher learnings, and they have been successfully enrolled in 8 different states. And we feel that we have achieved our original objective to provide an excellent education in a private school system for all the white children in Prince Edward County whose parents wanted to send their children to our schools regardless of their ability to pay. Now, each of the last 3 years, you know, the federal court issued an injunction which prevented all citizens from residing in Prince Edward County from obtaining educational grants from both the county and the state, so long as the public schools remained open. Now, of course, the decision has just been passed on by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the people now have some guidelines what they might be able to do next. But it's a feeling of the people in Prince Edward County that when the public school systems were established, say something like 40 or 50 years ago, there were 2 objectives laid down, and the first and most important was to provide a high level of education in the classrooms, and secondly, and which is very secondary and much lower on the scale, was to provide adequate physical facilities. And it's a feeling here that the 2 races cannot be educated in the same classrooms and continue to maintain that high level of education. It hasn't been done in New York City. It hasn't been done in Washington. And 3 years ago, the federal government was very insistent that the level of education should be further improved to keep pace with the students in Russia. And now, on the other hand, they're insisting on wide-scale integration, which experience has shown in Washington in particular, in New York and other places, that the level of education goes down when you try to mix the 2 races. And another thing that's been proven in Washington is when you force integration, the white people move out of the area.
and the schools become resegregated. I don't know how they're going to solve that problem.
What has been the Foundation's reaction to the Supreme Court decision of last week?
I think most people feel that the white people also should have rights under the 14th Amendment. It should not be a one-way street. The Negroes are maintaining that the federal court should force white children to go to school with the Negroes. And I'm in favor of, and the rest of us down here are in favor of giving everyone freedom of choice. If they want to send their children to an integrated school, they can do so. But if they want to have them educated with the members of their own race, either white or black, the parent should have that option.
Mr. T.J. McElwain is a superintendent of public schools without a school system. He's required by law to prepare a proposed operational budget each year. So he does and submits it to the Board of Supervisors, knowing in advance he'll get no money from Prince Edward County. Mr. McElwain came to Farmville first in 1918 as a school teacher. Mr. McElwain, can you get the public schools operational by September?
I hope so, if we can get the decisions made by the Board of Supervisors and the funds with which to operate.
How soon does that decision have to be made for you to get going?
Well, we would like to know before the end of June, if possible.
What will your major problems be in getting the schools open?
Of course, the major problem is employment of teachers and finding experienced teachers if possible.
Are you talking to teachers right now?
Well, I have applications from teachers, but I'm unable to make any offers to any teachers.
Because you're uncertain of the opening?
Because I'm uncertain of the opening, uncertain of available funds.
Mr. McElwain, I understand some schools will never reopen anyway. Could you tell me about those?
Well, there are 11 small schools, 1 and 2 and 3 room frame buildings, which probably would never be open again.
And where are those buildings, and who went to school there?
Those buildings were scattered all over the county, and they were largely used by Negro pupils.
Longwood College is doubly segregated, all white and all women. Most of the girls here are content to pursue their education without becoming involved in the problems of Prince Edward County. But as Dean Moss is an exception, so are some of the students. Dana Brewer and Donna Humflett are seniors. Donna, what activities are you involved in that directly concern the free school system of Prince Edward County?
Well, at the beginning of the year, the campus newspaper staff met with members of the free school newspaper staff, and we helped them with organization, how to write news stories, makeup, that sort of thing, and helped them with, editorial policy, gave them hints.
Dana, what about you?
We attempted to establish a biracial movement here by having a student conference of students, both Negro and white. It was the first, to my knowledge, that has ever been held in this county. Our object was human understanding on a personal level, and we feel that we achieved this.
Donna, you're editor of the school newspaper, The Rotunda. You've written editorials favoring the integration of the schools here. Can you tell me about those?
Well, I have written several editorials. Mostly it was deploring the school situation here and calling for a school system, a public school system. Also, we had an editorial that advocated the integration of the local theater, the only theater in town, but that was censored. And
who censored that?
A member of the administration, the acting president.
Farmville is a town with a college, but not a college town. About 1,400 Virginia women attend Longwood State Teachers College. Dr. C. Gordon Moss, academic dean at Longwood, was born in nearby Lynchburg and first came here to teach in 1926. When integration became an issue, he openly took an unpopular stand. Dr. Moss, we met your son Dick this morning out at the free school. I'd like to know if you ever considered sending him to Prince Edward Academy.
Really not for a single moment, despite the fact that he would have had the same faculty as he had had the previous year, I should say. And I have no qualms about any of them whatsoever. The school buildings would have been different, yes, but the buildings mean little in education. The reason I gave it no consideration at all was simply that it was founded upon a principle that I could not accept and that I dare not subject my son to. The principle that there should be differences between the opportunities given people because of the color of their skin.
As an historian, a student of history, and a teacher of history, why do you think there's such vigorous opposition to integration here in Prince Edward County?
Well, first of all, let me answer that negatively. I do not believe, I can see no reason for believing that the citizens of Prince Edward County are any more Southern than any other Southerners. I can't believe it's based upon the merely general inborn prejudice we have in regard to races. I suspect that a far more compelling reason is their desire to retain the attitude of condescending patronage to the Negroes, an attitude which has given them great salving of conscience in the years, and I suspect a feeling of generosity. Beyond that, there must be other reasons. And I, as a historian, think I see an economic cause of the greater bitterness here, an economic cause in all likelihood few people, if any, in the county are actually aware of. It lies along this line. In Prince Edward County, there are no industries that require skilled labor of any real degree. All of the labor force needed in Prince Edward County is unskilled labor and obviously less educated labor. And I suspect, though I do not believe any person, any individual is really conscious of it, that the ultimate reason here is to do away with the public schools, to avoid the expense of them, to maintain a private school for those white children who can afford it, and to allow the niggers, yes, but possibly also even the poorer white people to go without education and thereby maintain a plentiful, cheap labor supply.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moss.
That's it.
Spokesmen for segregation in Prince Edward County schools view the Supreme Court decision as a potential disaster for their cause and will use every legal means to maintain all white schools, including the academy. Negro leaders believe they have won a battle, but the extent of the victory is not quite clear. Implications for the future are summed up by Anthony Lewis, who reports on the Supreme Court for the New York Times.
The Supreme Court's decision on the Prince Edward County school case should make clear to the officials of that county and of the state of Virginia that they cannot so easily escape the responsibility for providing public education for their children. The case also has importance elsewhere in the South because other communities there have looked on Prince Edward as a symbol of resistance to the desegregation decision. In Mississippi, for example, the problem of desegregation may arise next fall for the first time in full force when court orders for desegregation are expected to take effect. And they will have to contend with a new principle that one county cannot give up public education in a state while others continue it. But what has happened in Prince Edward also can be important in the urban centers of the North. For we have seen in the Free School Association what can be done for children who come to school for the first time in an uneducated state, as many children from culturally deprived communities from the slums in the North also do.